ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. I was born in the darkest ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Srila Prabhupada ki. I just want to ask, are any of you here for the first time today? Okay, great. Welcome. Welcome. Good. This weekend we've been concentrating a little bit on Srila Prabhupada, the Guru, a spiritual master for the entire society, global society of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And the reason is because it was in this very place, Boston, which has a colorful history of Paul Revere and the Raiders and tea parties and things like that. Well, let's say recently, a great saint came, first touched American soil, and his name is His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. It happened here in September of 1965. Even before he hit New York, he came to Boston. So consider yourselves lucky Bostonians. Okay? Good. So that's been our theme this weekend. There's been glorious festivals going on, especially yesterday, and Harinam Sankirtan chanting outside at the pier where he first appeared. The pier where he peered, I guess. And it was a different landscape at that time. I was looking at an old photograph this morning, and it's definitely, there's a few more buildings up there. It looks less dingy, I guess, in a certain way. And maybe we can give that credit to, because His Divine Grace was there, so maybe it's, it was meant to look better. But we're taking a verse from Bhagavad Gita today, the most cherished book that he's given to us, I guess you could say. This and a follow-up, Srimad Bhagavatam, those two texts alone as they stand are very important pieces of literature which expound on the science of devotion, bhakti. So this is our Bible. This is our Bible. I was recently walking on a quiet highway in Canada, and a guy pulled over. He said, "Are you Buddhist?" I said, "No, I'm Hare Krishna." He said, "Then you're not a monk." I said, "No, I'm a monk and I'm a Hare Krishna." And he said, "So you're not a Buddhist, how can you be a monk?" And, he was a simple guy. The next point he made, he said, "I met the Hare Krishnas long ago. I once had a Hare Krishna Bible, and I gave it to somebody else, so I don't have it anymore." I said, "Well, I know where you can get one. Go to the local campsite. My buddy's there, and my god brother's there, and he can get you a Bhagavad Gita, a Hare Krishna Bible." So this is Bible territory traditionally. America was founded on, good old, Christian Protestant ethics. And that has also changed Boston and the whole of America and North America. Like, I'm from Canada, so I have to clarify. People sometimes say, "So you're American?" I said, "No, I'm from Canada." If you talk to somebody from New Zealand and you refer to them as Australian, they'll be slightly, they'll tell you there's a difference. I was going to say something else. But, so, the whole of North America, at least, say, 200-300 years, is based on principles of Christianity, which holds within it universal principles that you find through all cultures. Even the native indigenous people had, already had some of those basic elements of compassion, gentleness, fight only when you need to, but be quiet otherwise, shut your mouth, those kind of things. Don't kill, don't steal, all of this stuff, the whole gamut of things. So Srila Prabhupada came to present bhakti, and he was the first one. The first one bold enough, when I say first one, back in the 60s and even 50s, there were holy men who came from India to America, and they came with their message. And for many of them, it was a message about some aspect of truth, but maybe partial truth. Some of them were yoga teachers, and they were shy to tell about the essence of yoga, which is bhakti, devotion. One particular yogi who had become very popular, and whose headquarters was in Massachusetts, by the way, he said to Prabhupada, and they met, he said, "Oh, Swamiji, I love you so much." And, out of respect, Prabhupada being, let's say senior in years and experience as well. This gentleman, this sadhu, was just basically praising Prabhupada for his boldness in coming to the Western world and presenting what no other sadhu or holy man had done before, which is to present devotion to God, seeing God as a person, the supreme person. God is no longer a light or just energy or power or force. May the force be with you, as they say. But Prabhupada helped us to understand that God is the forceful. God is not energy. God is the energetic, and so on. He's not light. He's not just Jyoti, spiritual Jyoti. He's the source of the Jyoti, source of the light. So, and the relationship with God, prayojana, it's a Sanskrit word, means personal relationship with God. This kind of stuff, material, Srila Prabhupada was explaining for the first time, in depth. Chapter 9 in particular of this holy text, Bhagavad Gita, expounds on this, relationship idea, this confidential thing. Anyways, we've chosen here, let me just go back, trace back. The yogi was saying, you have done what nobody else has done, and that's why I love you. And that's why Srila Prabhupada is to be recognized for his uniqueness. And we say to him, thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for doing that. And giving us a mission statement. That's been our message this weekend. What's our mission? So a little publication came out with Nehemiah Nitai's efforts and other devotees about the mission. A verse from Bhagavad Gita, which is a little bit about to do with a mission and mission statement, is found in chapter 4, and this chapter is entitled Transcendental Knowledge, and it's text number 8. Here it is. Some of you know it. It's a famous one. And if it isn't famous for you, let it become famous. Paritranaya sadhunam, for those of you who know it, Paritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya chadushkritam, dharma sanstapanarataya, sambhavami yuge yuge. The translation, spoken by Krishna here, this verse, to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. And here's the purport. According to Bhagavad Gita, a sadhu, holy man, is a man in Krishna consciousness. A person may appear to be irreligious, but if he has the qualification of Krishna consciousness wholly and fully, he is to be understood to be a sadhu. Haribol, confirmed. Just to explain, give a little purport to this little section of the purport, you cannot really recognize a person's depth of spiritual evolution merely by looking at them. You can tell by how they dress. Some of you guys came in shorts today. I don't have a problem with it. In regular, civilian clothes, as we say. And there's no problem with that. We don't have a problem with that. And I take it that, you're very spiritually evolved. Maybe it took some guts to come here for the first time, But you did it. You stepped over a line, and that's an act of devotion. Good for you. It's a sign of a sadhu when you take steps towards the Supreme. Many people are going backwards, however, and stepping backwards by dint of their activities, which are worldly, self-centered. But everybody has a chance. Anyways, what this statement is saying is that you can't really judge. You really can't judge an individual by external features. So, let's carry on. And duskritinam applies to those who do not care for Krishna consciousness or God consciousness. Such miscreants, or duskritinam, are described as foolish and the lowest of mankind, even though they may be decorated with mundane education. Whereas a person who is 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness is accepted as a sadhu, even though such a person may be neither learned nor well cultured. So it doesn't require that one is necessarily a great jnani, as we say, a great philosopher, a great theologian, to be qualified as a truly great saint, but rather it's the mood in which you serve the Supreme that determines your spiritual evolution. The example can be given of some of the dearmost devotees of Lord Krishna who were residing in India, what's now modern-day India, at the same time that Krishna was, 5 millennia ago. And they were simple village people. They were people who herded cows, and they herded them for the milk, not for the meat. And they were not great in their educational status. However, they showed the utmost devotion to Krishna by always concentrating on Krishna. And why Krishna? Because according to the Bhagavad Gita, he's the supreme entity. How do we understand this, and why is it so important to know this? Because this is his book. I said before, it's our Bible. We live by this. The Bhagavad Gita extols principles, they offer guidelines. The Gita offers guidelines whereby we can live a better life, a more full life. And full life means material and spiritual together. It doesn't mean, let me have a lot of, let me fulfill the American dream, and I'll have a little spiritual life on the side. A little bit about the word duskritina. Krishna says, I do away with the duskritinas. Duskritina means, it's a Sanskrit word, means, when you break it down, means one who's meritorious for mischief making. One who's famous for being a bad guy. This is American culture. We look at those people who are sort of nasty, who do something a little bit bold and daring, but it's kind of nasty, and they get recognized for their nastiness. We're talking about some famous people from Boston. If we go to Chicago, you're Al Capone. He's, everybody, you mentioned his name, so he's an interesting guy, colorful character. And, he became famous for being nasty. There's this town or city, I should say, in Canada. It's called Moose Jaw. I walked through it a couple of times. And don't ask me why the city got that name. It's really another story. But, in order to deal with, the economic situation there, some wise businessmen got together. They figured out, okay, we got to market this place better. We found hot springs, good. Build a hotel around it, everyone will come. They're doing it. What else? Well, there's some speculation that Al Capone spent time in Moose Jaw during the bootlegging period when he fled from the States, from the authorities there. He went to Canada. Nobody really knows for sure that he went there, but it's a good theory. So on the Trans-Canada Highway, the main highway, they got big billboards with Al Capone on there. Visit Moose Jaw. Al Capone was supposedly there. So anyways, we're talking about famous people who made it, who got recognition for their, dirty work. And if you do something pious, something good, hardly a people come out of the media or, from people. You just have to do something bad and you'll be okay. You'll be famous. So in regards to this, Krishna says, I annihilate the miscreants. Now that sounds like a real strong statement. God, here's your nice guy, God, and he's coming and he's killing. If we study the life of Krishna, indeed he did this. He actually killed, did away with physical bodies. However, not to get too deeply into the theological aspect of it, at the same time, because he's the supreme mystic, he was able to award liberation at the same time to these wrongdoers. And that's something that none of us can do. Liberation, what does this mean? Well, it's understood that after we have this body and we live our hopefully full life, we shed this body. And then what else happens? Our actual Atma, our true identity, our soul goes somewhere. And there are many options as to where you can go. Because the world is big. And there are many places, many lokas, many planets even. We will go so far as to say that there's many living entities living on other planets. Yes, there are such things as Martians. And we may not be able to see them with our naked eye, but there's living entities there. They exist there, and we can, with our limited abilities, cannot perceive them. But living entities are everywhere in subtle forms. So this then means that subtle forms, but also having spirits or souls, atmas. And when we die, we go on into another existence, another world, and in another body. Is this advancement? Is it an achievement or an award? Or is it punishment? It really depends on which place and also which kind of body one acquires. But just to put it in a kind of like a very simple nutshell explanation, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma Bhuvanaloka, Punar Avaritinorjana, from the highest planet to the lowest, all are places of repeated birth and death. So any place you go to is kind of a bad bargain, because there's a certain level of misery that comes along with being in this material world. Srila Prabhupada puts it like this, from Indra, who's considered to be one of the greatest demigods, to Indra Gopam. Indra Gopam was like a one-cell creature. All go through their misery. From the ant to the elephant, all go through misery, And that's what it means to be in the material world. So that's one option. You go to any place and it'll all be, you'll have your happy times, but there'll be sad times as well. It's all mixed up. And but then there's the option that we're talking about, which is very unique, is that you can make a choice to get out of this whole whirlpool of repeated birth and death, samsara, as we say, and become liberated. Krishna was able to award liberation to all the miscreants. That's very good on his part. Even the evildoers are those that are able to get some kind of benediction. Now I say that word evil. I understand the word is not a good politically correct word these days. Recently when I was walking on not such a lonely highway, but a busy one. I had the opportunity to speak to a journalist, and her name was Anne Harding, and she said, she was asking me about what I believed in and what are our tenets and of Krishna consciousness. And I explained those things, and I used some words that were a little harsh to her ears as a journalist. And she was relating to a funeral that she had recently attended. And it was a funeral over 2 Royal Canadian Mounted Police that had been killed. So that was a big deal. And the minister who gave the eulogy or spoke, he was saying this was an evil act. Evil. Well, I don't know. I can ask you folks, is it true? Is it bad? Or is it good? Or is it comme ci, comme ça? Or whatever. But from her angle, so this is the word we don't use, it's not part of our jargon as a reporter. So she asked me, what's my take on it? And I said, I would back the minister all the way. So there is evil and there is good. And we all have experience of good and evil, and we're the recipients of it, and we also, let's say, project it. Good and evil things. We do all the time. Am I right about that? So Krishna recognizes the good and the evil, and at least when he was around, he actually got very involved and wiped out some of these miscreants, duskritinas. Now this still applies, but his particular approach is different. You might say that he's not necessarily personally, physically here amongst us, but he's come in a different form. He's come in the form of in a very esoterical way. He's come in the form of sound vibration. And that sound vibration is supposed to kill not just the individual, but rather kill the demonic spirit, the evil spirit that's in us. Everybody will be willing to admit that we might have some evil spirits within us. So the whole idea, the whole notion here is to attack, make an attack on these the evil forces that are within us. And this is what purification means. To become purified means to shed some of the negative aspects of ourselves. So let's go on. As far as the atheistic are concerned, it is not necessary for the Supreme Lord to appear as he is to destroy them, as he did with the demons Ravan and Kams. The Lord has many agents who are quite competent to vanquish demons, but the Lord especially descends to appease his unalloyed devotees who are always harassed by the demonic. There's many accounts of this in the history of our Vedic literatures, of people who are well-meaning and yet they get harassed. And I guess there's lots of cases for human rights issues and so on like that. Krishna's particular interest is to give protection to those individuals who are well-being, well-intentioned. Even if the physical body goes, he's there to preserve what good you have. So, for those of us who believe firmly in the life hereafter, if you've started on the path of goodness and devotion in particular, then that will be preserved. Krishna explains in the Gita, I preserve what they have. Whatever's good is there, he preserves it, he retains it. This is a great favor from, coming from his side, to help to retain what's good. Because it's hard to keep good things good. Usually good, sweet things turn sour. This is oftentimes the case. And it usually doesn't work the other way around. Usually when things hang around, they stay around, they get rancid and they get putrid. And, Prabhupada was talking about one yogi who, he was very attracted to a lot of followers, and He went into samadhi, meaning he left his body. And his followers were there. They were worshiping him, and they felt that he's in another world. And he really was in another world. But his body was hanging around, and they figured out that maybe we should put the body somewhere because it was just starting to putrefy. And so this is what happens, is that things generally don't, whatever's good it's hard to retain, that goodness. So Krishna is there to help in this respect. The last thing that Krishna has to say here, I come to this world to establish principles of Dharma. And, after wiping out the demonic element and giving protection to the conscious souls, then how do you preserve it? How do you sustain the goodness? You establish principles of Dharma. That's what it is. Otherwise, he'll have to be coming every week, to do the dirty work, right? So, for those who are interested in staying good, you follow the formulas of Dharma. And, that's a very, very broad topic. Dharma is very broad. But, to put it in simple terms, one translation is duty, to be duty-bound. And there are two main levels where we're duty-bound. One is very much on the psychophysical level, where you identify what is your varna, or meaning, your occupation, where do your real skills lie. And the other level is performing your dharma or duty on more of a spiritual level, which we call Sanatana Dharma. And when we look in the context of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking to a warrior, and he's saying, you are a warrior, get on with it. That's what you're made for. The beginning of the Gita is like that. Krishna is stepping on Arjuna's tail, so to speak, and saying, let's move. Then, practically the entire rest of the Bhagavad Gita, which is really a conversation that took place over a few minutes, Krishna was highlighting the spiritual side of life, spiritual duty to the Lord within the heart, to God, and to Guru, and to other associates like spiritual individuals. Krishna talks about Mahatmas in Bhagavad Gita, the great souls who are always engaged in glorification of the Lord, who are not caught up in the material, program of self-centeredness. So on these two levels, Dharma is significant, and we call this Varnashram. It runs in two ways, the Varna and the Ashram aspect. Varna refers to your job, your occupation, and then ashram refers to what stage you are in life. And it's quite genius what Krishna has done in this respect to give these kind of guidelines. When we're young and kind of restless and frivolous, Krishna allows you to be dharmically like a child, play. Prabhupada, he said, let the children do what they like. When they reach 5, then some discipline, right? So, I guess you're okay. And so anyways, we get into our adolescence, and, you go through your education. There has to be some kind of controls. It's education. So traditionally we call it brahmacharya, some kind of education. Your passions have to be, let's say, yoked, controlled. Then when you are in the fullness of your passion, you've got some training, you're allowed to be grihastha. Grihastha means, sense gratification, some control, build your empire, build buildings, conquer, whatever, do all the passionate things you need to do. But keep the spiritual center in focus. Right? Then later on, after you've done all of that, there's the program of Vanaprast. Vanaprast means, okay, you've been in the city, you've built your fort, you've built up your business, whatever. Now spend some time in the Vana, the forest, or at least go to where it's quieter. Go on parikrama, go to holy place, and go with your spouse. Travel. You've got a lot of passions out of your system. It's not there like it used to be. Your hormonal power is not what it once was. Sad to say. And then, after that, it might be time to downsize even more, simplify even more. And just, if you're so inclined, you're on your own. But you're not on your own. Krishna's always with you. When Prabhupada first came to America, Boston, and New York, he said, I'm alone, but seemingly alone. I'm not really alone. He always gave credit to his Guru Maharaj. He always remembered what his Guru wanted him to do and asked him to do. And Krishna, of course, is always there. Krishna is in the core of the heart. He's always there. So you're never, ever alone. But seemingly alone. So, and you feel protected. There's no, you won't die of loneliness like a lot of people. I think it's probably one of the biggest diseases today. People encounter loneliness. They say it's cancer. They say it's AIDS, this, that. But I believe probably it's loneliness is what really kills a lot of people. I'm modern day society. You're either very lonely or you're overworked with too much going on, too much interaction, and there's no in between. They say that there's no middle class. There's no middle anything anymore. It's always an extreme. Extreme means mode of passion. It's a passionate world. That's Prabhupada identified that right off the bat when he came to Boston. This is a passionate place. He said passion and ignorance. Sorry, Boston. It's a nice, handsome-looking city, but there's some parts of you that aren't so nice. So anyway, sannyas, final stage. Krishna's giving an endorsement. He's approving. This is what is supposed to happen. You're supposed to simplify. Don't worry about it. Some people in their older years, they say, I can't sleep. I can't sleep very much. Well, did you ever think maybe you're not supposed to sleep very much? I'm suffering from insomnia. Well, maybe you're not supposed to be sleeping a lot. Maybe you're supposed to be praying more and meditating more. Right? That's the idea. It just reminds me of a little joke. W.C. Fields kind of a wacko. But somebody said, yes, insomnia. I know a good cure for it. Get plenty of rest. But some people can't rest. They just can't. So maybe you're not meant to. Accept it. It's your karma. It's the way it is. So this program, Varna and Ashram, it's a social structure. Krishna explains that this is a system established by himself, which is meant for human development. And humans are unique. We are supposed to evolve spiritually. That's what makes us stand out from all other forms of life. I know some people will argue about this. They'll say dolphins are very, very advanced. I know they are. Elephants, they're very, very intelligent creatures. Elephant experts have said they're very conscious. They use that term, conscious. It's fine. But are they Krishna conscious? Apart from Gajendra, here's one good story. But humans have that ability to be able to understand the difference between matter and spirit. And that's what Prabhupada gave us. So he came to America and he saw, such a, incredible development of factories and buildings and hotels and shopping centers and, homes of all kinds. He saw this, and the educational institutions. And he said there's so many educational institutions which deal with different departments of knowledge, but where do we find the department of knowledge that deals with the soul, the Atma? So that's lacking. It's very much lacking. And so that's what Prabhupada had come to do, to fill up that gap. And that's why we say thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for providing for us a piece of information that we are ignorant of. I mean, he said, I have come to you to tell you what you have forgotten. So at some point in time, we understood. We are cognizant of certain subject matters that we're not aware of at the present moment. So we thank Srila Prabhupada for taking such bold steps. And he was bold. We were reading this morning that he ended up in America in 1965, but I think people were quite clothes conscious in a certain way. If you didn't look a certain way, like in those days, of course, that was sort of a turning point. The Beatles, they had their hair growing over the ear, and this is like, for the older generation, this is like, it's total taboo. But, I just prior to that time, everybody was very prim and proper the way they looked. They had to have a haircut, but like your style. Anything longer than that, and you were an outcast practically. So you're doing good, even so Srila Prabhupada came in robes. People didn't wear robes. Even in those days, Catholic priests were already wearing pants. I was speaking to one Catholic priest. I decided to wear regular clothes because people come and ask you, do you have any legs under those robes? So he was conscious. Too self-conscious. Not conscious, self-conscious. So Srila Prabhupada came and he had white pointed shoes, quite common for, sadhus in those particular times coming from India. And it was just, he looked very different. And he wore the white tilak on his forehead. In those days, nobody wore war paint. And war, because we were declaring war. Prabhupada said, you were declaring war on Maya. Maya means the illusory energy. So we wear tilak, war paint. I mean, that's one way to look at it. It's our cosmetics, though. And I guess it is meant to intimidate Maya, the illusory power. And if Srila Prabhupada had shaven head, of course, he was already 69, so it's not a big deal for guys at that age. And of course, these days, to have a shaven head is quite, in fashion, in style. Nobody had a shaven head in those days, and it was looking cool except for Mr. Clean with his earring, and T-shirt on. And he was way ahead of his time. He looked muscular. He was way ahead of his time, way ahead. He was like at the cutting edge, decades ahead. So Srila Prabhupada he was an oddity, he looked that way. My point is that he was bold. He was an incredible risk taker. And, he was dealing with, young whippersnapper, American boys and girls who had all this incredible passion, but a certain boldness. His whole idea, let's go to America. Because in India, people were not taking hold of their own dharma. He made the attempt. He was in Jhansi, in Uttar Pradesh. And people were not biting. They were not taking to it. He established a mission there first before he came to America. Then he came here. And his whole idea was, well, if some Americans can take to the process, then everyone else will follow. One story that's there, Prabhupada was in India, and he was driving with some devotees in a car, and it happened to be an American car, and the horn wasn't working. So, in India, you cannot function in traffic without a horn working. Am I right about that, Mataji? Any of you been to India? It's true, eh? People have painted on the back of their trucks, horn please. That means constantly honk. And when you honk, then people get out of the way, and that's the traffic control program over there. Yeah, so anyways, Prabhupada had an idea. It was ingenious. He had a tully, a metal plate, and he had some kind of spoon or another device, and he stuck it out the window and he banged it, ding, 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 like this. So then people heard that and they knew to get out of the way, so the car could proceed forward. And then Prabhupada made a remark. He said that because it's an American car and we are making this kind of noise, now everyone will follow us. So Prabhupada's ingenious ways were like that. He was thinking, whatever Americans do, the whole world will follow. And that was the formula that he applied. And it worked. It actually worked. So it took almost a year's time, but some young American folks, boys and girls, came and joined. They became his students. And then he thought, let me bring these students over to India. And he had them wear suits and ties in the worst month of the year when it was, all hot and sweaty. But anyways, they did it as an act of austerity. And people were amazed. Oh my God. Americans with tilak on, but shirt and pants and tie and coat. And with a shika. And with beads, mala, like my grandfather used to have those. That was like the kind of remarks, feedback that people were getting. And so they took interest, people from India. And those were the days in the 60s and 70s where you were very shy about anything that was Indian, You were proud that Ravi Shankar was from India, that Gandhi was from India, and all these things. But everybody was shy in those days. And then, lo and behold, and we give so much credit to Prabhupada, those of you who are from India, then after you broke out of your shyness, there was a turning point. Maybe it was after the whole Ramayana and the Mahabharata series on TV where the whole world stopped in India. People say, that's our tradition, that's wonderful, that's us. And we are, when people got established here and so on like that, you could be proud of your tradition, your culture. So we must give credit to Prabhupada. He was the first one to do that. He wasn't shy, didn't have a shy bone in his body in that respect. I just, personally, I just admire him so much for that, I mean, at the age of 69 to be a trailblazer, it's just almost unheard of. It really is. Usually people who start trends are when they're 15, 16, the cool guys. But Prabhupada was cool at 69, and even before that. So we thank Srila Prabhupada. And the mission, since this, I guess we're going to have to round up things very fast. The mission of Srila Prabhupada is the same as Krishna's. Srila Prabhupada has come to give endorsement to piety, to say you're doing good. And he was always good at bringing the best out of people. He was always there to kind of highlight and say, when you were doing good, he would tell you. He always had this full appreciation. And he came to say, let's do away with the bad stuff. And now here are some principles to follow. So that he did. He carried the same spirit as Lord Sri Krishna. Same mission statement. Same thing. It hasn't changed for 5,000 years, and I don't think it's going to change. Anybody want to argue about that one? When it comes to certain details, they may change in terms of approach, but the basic principles are always going to be there. So now, those of us who claim to be of any kind of devotee, we might look to this particular, let's say, text and say, well, how do I fit into this? How I factor into this particular verse? And well, our job is to be pious and to also to encourage other people who are pious. And those who are not, well, let's encourage them in this area. And let's be principled people. Let's show by our example. Teach and follow. And that's really our mission. That's what Prabhupada set out to do. To come and show people how they could end up being lovers of Krishna, lovers of God. And this is where it all starts from, by following this particular procedure here. So we're indebted to him. We're indebted to him. And people who live in this part of the world, this part of the country, can feel some fortune, some special blessing that, he came here, he started here. And you can say that it's sacred territory. It's a pilgrimage place. It's a tirtha, as we say, in Boston. The first tirtha on the Western soil, as far as Krishna consciousness is concerned. And so you guys, all of you Prabhus, ladies and gentlemen, you're very blessed to be here. Now, what he said was, I have made you fortunate, talking to his disciples. Now I've made you fortunate, now you make others fortunate. So that's our mission statement policy. You'll find that when you take to the principles of Krishna consciousness, it's beautiful. It's a great breath of fresh air, a new experience. It's novel. Now, to keep the freshness going, you'll find that practically the only formula is to now express it to other people. Otherwise, you'll end up being like a stagnant pond. So flow nice like a fresh river and deliver Krishna consciousness. And, there will be no room for gossip, backbiting, all the petty little stuff, which even neophyte devotees will get into. If you want to save yourself from those offensive ways, okay, sure, then that's the formula. That's the approach you have to take. You just, I've seen it. I've seen it in different communities. Those people that tend to, let's say, get involved in fault finding and gossiping, it's because they're not doing anything about delivering the message of Krishna consciousness. They're missing out on something. They're missing out on the higher taste, the sweet taste of Krishna consciousness. It comes from this. It's derived from this. Spreading Krishna consciousness, delivering the word of Krishna, the name of Krishna. You really feel happy. You will feel fulfilled and contented. So again, I think Prabhupada addresses it. There are those people who are happy about their own liberation, and it's hard for them to progress. But those who have a greater concern, like in the mood of great stalwarts like Prahlad Maharaj, great saints, I must take some concern for other people as well. And when you do, naturally you'll feel very, very satisfied. You feel like you are making progress. It's very, very purifying. Don't leave other people out of it. What I'm saying is that let's not be a closed community. We have to be very open door. In Nairobi, the devotees started a temple there in the early days, and it was predominantly a Hindu community. And, they closed the doors so that the local people can't come in during the Sunday program time. And Prabhupada got on their manager's case. Stop this. Open these doors. We've come here to this part of the world for them. That was Prabhupada's notion. Always. His thrust was that. Let us go out to the world and let everybody have it. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry have it. Have Krishna consciousness. So I want to thank you, Srila Prabhupada, very much, and thank all of you great personalities who have taken some time to come today to hear a few things. And whether you're here for the first time or have come many times, my advice to you is give Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yes. Do we have time for anything at all? Do we have time for any question or not really?
Until 6:10.
6:10? Okay, go ahead.
I come from Bhubaneswar, Odisha.
Oh, nice.
Close to Jagannath Dham.
Jai.
In Bhubaneswar we have got ISKCON temple.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Prabhupada's last temple before he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I had talked to Bhaktivedanta Swami
Mm-hmm.
when he was leaving.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I have read in my mother tongue, Bhaktivedanta Swami has translated this complete book, Bhagavad Gita and Holiness into Odia.
Mm-hmm.
That I have read completely.
Mm-hmm.
That is my first introduction to only for Prabhupada only I could read the Bhagavad Gita.
Good.
I am an engineer
Okay.
by profession. I retired as the engineer-in-chief of the state.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Now you have the benefit
Yeah.
of reading Bhagavad Gita, right? Are you giving that Bhagavad Gita out to others?
Pardon?
Are you giving out the message of the Gita to
Sure.
others?
I'm
You
going
are?
to colleges and schools,
Uh-huh.
to young people.
Right,
If Swamis speak to them, they don't hear.
right.
If Swamis speak to them, young people, they don't hear. They say it is
Right.
from a father or grandfather.
Right, right. I gotcha.
So I have devised, I speak the same thing in a different language that they understand.
Okay.
I never utter the word Bhagavad Gita, they are scared. Out of that content only I speak. When gradually, when people get accustomed, then I tell, I am not taking, there is nothing me, not a word is mine. It is everything from Lord Krishna, straight from Godhead.
Wow.
That's it, that's a part. I have my own doubts.
Okay.
I just started, I couldn't resist asking you. Because you all devoted people.
First of all, let me commend you for delivering Krishna consciousness, Bhagavad Gita, and doing it in a careful way that where people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That's to be applauded and to be followed.
Yeah, that's
Doubts.
My question is only from Gita itself. When Lord speaks of soul,
Mm-hmm.
omnipresent, omnipotent, everywhere soul existing, I am not a body with a soul, but I am soul with a body. When it comes to that, the question of identity of my individual identity with the soul, I am unable to catch.
Mm-hmm.
When I am omnipotent, when I am omnipresent, when God resides in me, a spirit, that's why I am living. The weight of a dead body and living body being same. So that part that makes me living, not a dead body, that's God in me, Lord Krishna inside me. Okay. That me, what I told, not this body, this is to want. Okay. Then when that independent identity of me exists, when I am dead, I will be reborn. I will get another body. Okay. I will get another body. That I, who is that I? Not this body. So what I did in this life, when I go back, when I look back, I am to die. Heart is beating. It is God's grace. What for is beating this heart, I don't know. I will die. I will die. That I am speaking is the body. I that residing in such body is not going to die. I agree. That's the Lord's declaration. And again says, Paramatma, Jivatma, both permanent and perennial. So I am different from God. God is God and I am Atma. Paramatma and I am Atma. Permanent disciple, permanent in service of the Lord. Okay. I, that individual identity, how does it exist? How it is justified? I mean, yet I am not clear. Can you please explain?
Okay. I don't have much time. What are we doing?
Yeah, the Pujari is asking if we could begin.
Okay, we should begin. But just, we will talk a little more. The Bhagavad Gita does not address so much the identity of the individual, how we are unique from all other souls. But Krishna does make a case about the difference between matter and spirit. As you know, chapter 2 begins there. And yes, Prabhupada has made it very clear too, the difference between the body and the self. So we must identify with the self. He also speaks about how we are individuals in the sense that here I am, there you are, and here are all these kings. Eternally we're different. So there's hints of it here and there that we're unique and different from each other. Just for starters. Pardon me? By chanting, we will be able to understand our nature. Yes, that's true. That we have to do right now. Let's talk over Prasadam a bit more, okay? You gave a wonderful purport there.
No, he simplified, he said only chanting, nothing more necessary, no knowledge, nothing necessary, just chant. You
Practically, that's what it boils down to. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Jai Shri Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Very short.